Everybody, welcome to Boldly Branded Day 2. I'm so excited to dive into content, especially after yesterday. So today I have a couple slides for us today. Now, the biggest thing from yesterday and today is that, which we'll get more into this call here, is that it's not about creating new types of content. I'm not here to show you guys, oh, I made up this whole new style of content. It's about creating content, creating your brand from the energy of yesterday, this identity that's you, because it's not new. You're already creating amazing content. It's adding that energy in, that's going to bring the shift into your premium buyer client. So let's dive right in. I have some slides for us today. Can you guys all see my screen? Samia, are we good? Yeah, okay. Okay, Boldly Branded. This is where you create a brand that's dripping in authority. It turns heads, it sells to your premium buyers before you even do the pitch. Now, the thing here with Boldly Branded, today we're talking voice, your brand voice. And yes, content's part of that, but this is also the brand voice throughout your entire brand. Now, this means emails, your feed itself, like not necessarily hooks, well, that's part of it, but the feed itself, like when you think about the energy, the personality, let's say, of a movie star. You know how a celebrity, they have very strong personalities. You kind of know exactly who they are, what they're about, and what they stand for. This is what we're bringing out through your brand. And we're going to dive into some identity and personality stuff and how to tap that into, drip it into your brand in a way that's very conscious, how you want it to be. Okay, the main thing, you're here because yesterday you felt the deepest level of you, your next level, authentic, boldest, richest woman and entrepreneur self that you are. How are we feeling today after yesterday's practice? Did you guys tap into her? Like after feeling that, do you feel a shift? I see you guys nodding there. Yes. 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 It felt good. I did the practice again this morning. And just a reminder that this isn't a one-time thing. Like, I really feel, this is so funny, and it's not the truth, but like, okay, we can end here. Because that's the shift. I feel like that's the shift that women, female entrepreneurs need. But now we're going to dive into some strategy and the voice to tie it all together. So you already know that identity, your identity determines your income. It's not the strategy. It's not who you choose to hire. It's your identity. It's who you're identifying as. Because when you're creating content and showing up from, let's say 3 days ago, which she was beautiful and perfect as she is, but versus that woman that you felt like yesterday, that's a different identity. That determines your income. And you know from yesterday, staying connected to your vision with an attachment will determine how far you go. Identity, vision, and your evolution will determine your success and happiness in entrepreneurship long term. Those three things together, this creates the bold identity that you have embodied yesterday. Now to separate that, like the last bit here, you know that to achieve the success and the $1 million business, while you have this joy in your heart and people can feel you're feeling and love the journey of entrepreneurship comes from creating from the identity you shifted into yesterday. And also knowing that this is going to evolve with you. Woo! Entrepreneurship, identity, shift, ego death, all the things, everything we're talking about, good, go time. And then 4 months from now, oh, here we are again. That's the beauty of it. You build skills every time when you get to know, okay, shift this, shift that, like as you tie all this together, it will shift with you. The biggest thing I see, and it happens when you start to hit certain income levels. It happens when more money comes, more eyes, more mentorship. It's changing what's already working. And when you have this strong brand, your audience comes with you. You just know, you trust. And it's inevitable. Your evolution is a common denominator in your brand. Give me 1 second, I'll let somebody in. The last takeaway about yesterday, and the word that we wrote down, I really want you to notice that there was a part of it where I led you, I guided, but then towards the end, those are your words, your body movements. This is your brand expression. Now we get to, actually, let me switch slides. Actually, I'll save that for a second. Brand identity we did yesterday. Today, we are going over the brand voice. Now, this is the tonality we're speaking in. That's the celebrity, the movie star example I gave you. It's also your isms. When I say isms, I couldn't think of another way to say this, but this is how I talk about it. It's like your Soumya isms, your Ariel isms, your Desiree isms, the things that you say under your tone of breath. You probably say it a lot on your calls. Brand mottos. Now, what this looks like on a feed, for example, because we have our strategic content, which is designed to convert, your copy designed to convert. That's a non-negotiable. Something that I teach and preach is an expression post, not to be confused for one of your conversion posts. Like, this is not to supplement that. It's an extra. It's an extra thing. It could be, it's a fine line between being inspirational, but leaders are inspirational. They activate you to move, activating and inspiring, but inspirational by way of your voice, combined with all your strategic content. Now, what that can look like, let's say it's, I'll do this sometimes when I do an expression post, and on the cover, I'll write in really big letters. Like, I know it's not necessarily, this is your problem, here's how to solve this, it's that. So on the cover, I'll put Lust for Life, very big, because that's part of my brand. I'll write Happy, Hot, Rich as Fuck, part of my brand, in my branding colors, deliberately. So that's something where you're bleeding in these things into your brand, creating a movement that's recognizable. This can also look like, I'm going to use my example, my personal example, Lust for Life. I have it saved in my like in my photos with a translucent background. So every now and then I'll drop it into my Instagram story. Like, whenever you can, see these little things in, because your audience starts to remember you for things. Does your audience know your favorite song? You have no idea how many times people will message me, oh, I heard this song, I thought about you. Oh, this, oh, that. You want to pop up in people's minds. I used to, I don't drink anymore at all. I haven't drank for a long time, but I used to love the beer Blue Moon. That's kind of funny because, like, I don't drink, but I'll like talk about Blue Moon, and I would get it and I would have like, I would just take like 4 sips, but the glass was really cold and I spoke to that. I'm like, I hate beer, I hate drinking, but Blue Moon, and I would like get so excited about it. You know how many people would send me, like, they would be driving by, see it somewhere or in a restaurant and see it and send me that? I'm like, wow, this like caught on. I don't like it anymore now at all, but wow. It's these little tiny things that you may not even realize you're saying. And for me, when I started tapping into this part of my expression and my brand, it was like driving me crazy. I was like, what are my isms? Like, what do I say? I don't know. And it's almost like, when you're aware that you're looking for them, it makes it harder, but you just got to pay attention. And you might know already. Are there songs? I always use the same songs very often. Music, use it in reels. Like, it's not always about the trending reels. And sometimes, like, I'm thinking about a reel specifically, your brand is like very luxurious, very luxurious. Like, I'm on there, I'm like, oh, it feels like actually, this is an example I'm going to use later, but if you don't follow Abrielle, look at her feed. It's very like a life. Feels like a vision board. It feels like, like you want to feel something. Now, that's a good example that I'm going to use later, actually. So we'll use you as an example. But really diving into what is yours brand voice. Now, let's talk a little bit about a brand voice versus a bold brand voice. I kind of dived into it a little bit, but I'm reading this book right now, or for the second time, 10X versus 2X. Has anybody read that in here? It's amazing. I'm reading the second time. One of my mentors recommended it to me. I recommend it to everybody. I might make it one of my, kind of like a little book club, essentially-ish, For my mastermind, like we'll have a quick little chat about it. It's amazing, amazing, life-changing. So there is content that is let's call it based on a book, 2x content, which look, it's good. Who doesn't want double, right? Who doesn't want double? But then you have your 10x content, bold. This is the bold content. 2x is going to give certain results and 10x are going to give you certain results too. The 10x version of you is the bold version of you content is the one that was yesterday. She doesn't second guess herself. And when I say these things, think about where are you second guessing yourself in this? She doesn't second guess herself. She focuses on not like the one specific income goal right now, but she focuses on the bigger vision. The biggest part of the way that I teach content and branding, there's an underlying, like I said yesterday, an underlying feeling of shadow work. Because you have to understand when you want to say something or you want to share something, why don't I want to? Is that an ownership thing in me? Or is it I'm worried about somebody else and something? Somebody thinking something? Okay, cool. Let me either have a difficult conversation, remove them from my follower list, or genuinely learn to hold it. So tapping into that part of yourself. And in understanding this validation piece, there will be certain times in business where there's validation happening. And letting that and knowing that it's going to have its ups and downs. It could be because there's a launch happening, or maybe you're very visible at the time, or you're deep in and active in masterminds and group spaces, but allowing that ebb and flow and not making it mean anything about you. Okay, I'm going to talk a little bit about when I made the shift and what some of this looked like. Before I was really clear on, like, let's say I had a brand, I had a feeling, but it wasn't like, it was always me, but it wasn't this internal thing, this internal feeling. I had strategy, I was checking the boxes, content strategy. And the biggest part of this is I was posting, hoping somebody engaged, hoping it looked good on my feed, it fit my content strategy. And I was sometimes second guessing if it's going to trigger anybody. Is this client going to think it's about her? Oh, my friend in my mastermind might think it's about her. Fuck. She teaches it so differently. So there's these tiny little things that they creep up in your mind. They creep up. And you need to know what they are. So part of this was shifting out of that. That's 2x. Posting, hoping that's 2x. 10x, some big 10x shifts were this bold brand voice. One, the biggest one for me was owning that I don't want to be just known for the content person. I'm really good at content, yeah, but I don't want to just be known as that. And that took balls, it took grit, it took grit. Because there's another layer of vulnerability. And by the way, there's nothing wrong for being known for one thing. You do want to be highlighted for certain things. Obviously, you're a business, but there's a difference between a business, like scaling a business and scaling a brand movement, to where a movement is going to have leadership, authority. It's going to have stories. It's going to have a little bit more oomph and more life than a business. And both are beautiful. Both are businesses, both are companies, but there's a different energy behind them, and neither are right or wrong. It's just understanding which is you, because that's going to determine how you share, how much you share. And again, I always say this, neither are wrong. The problem comes into when you're, fuck, I want to share this. Should I want to share that? But you don't, that friction. And it doesn't mean that because you want to share it, you have to, or you should, that I'm saying you should. It could be a simple, whoop, you know what? Whoop, I want to share XYZ thing, but I decided, which we'll talk about next, I decided that doesn't match the brand image I want to put out there. And it's something happens to your nervous system when you say that. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, I want to share XYZ story or thing, but it doesn't make sense for my brand image. And that's beautiful because I don't want it to be that way. Not because my mentor isn't that way. Do you guys see the difference there? It's a freedom. And in that, so that energy, it comes off in every single post, every email, everything. Now I'm going to come back to the bit we said about deciding. Two bits here. The person, your business, your brand has a personality, and you get to decide what that is. This is going to play off of what I just said a little while ago in deciding how much and what parts of you come into your brand. Like the biggest thing problem that people come up with branding and when we start working together is how much of me do I share, or I want to share. It tends to be the sexy. I want to bring more sexy online. I want to bring more. It's more of like a softer vibe normally. And it's first the mindset of one, you don't have to. Two, your sexy is going to look very different than mine. You can be activated and enjoy my content, but never want to post anything like that. But that thing in you that you felt yesterday does need to be expressed. And you can bleed it into your page in different ways. And now these things are so tiny, so nuanced, but they will fill that need. It's a need to express that in your brand. It could be in music that you choose to use, music over your reels. It could be a certain filter that you use that gives it that vibey feel. It could be changing your outfit, changing your clothes to something that feels sexy. And it's just like a tiny little lower top. Like only you know what that is, but it's feeling what makes you feel that you felt yesterday. Like what makes you feel sexy and how can we tie that into your brand so that when you open it up, you feel that juicy excitement. Because if you're not excited to look at your content, to consume your feed, if you don't get on there, and I always joke about it and say like, oh, I want to lick my feed because I do. I look at it, I'm like, oh, Jesus. I feel that. And you get to feel that way about yours too. So a big part of that is deciding. This will remove any kind of blocks that you have, whether it is a font. And this, again, the feed is not surface level. The feed is an expression. It tells a story. I'm thinking about a conversation I had with somebody on here about a color, like bringing colors or bringing an energy into the brand. And it doesn't have to be there. It could be like trickled in somewhere. It could be like testing things out. It could be, and then the other response could be, that's not my brand image. That's not my brand vibe. But there again, it is that friction. And really tapping into what is really that expression? Is it a playful? Is it a sexy? Is it a bold energy? And what does that bold energy look like? Can we bring it in somewhere else? So you deciding what part of that is going to make the biggest difference in how you feel going into your brand, because that's going to determine what people feel when they're reading your content, when they're consuming you, when they're on your feed. Now, in that personality part, it's so important, like not to make any part of it wrong. And I always have to say this about my brand because my brand is very curated. We went over this a bit yesterday, and very raw also. And if that's like the rawness that you're craving that you want, but not so raw, like let's say it doesn't match the brand image that you've created, you want to keep creating, you can share some raw things like behind the scenes of photo shoots, like actual video of you talking to, let's say on a call with clients. Or maybe it's things that you actually do in real life. This happened with somebody, I think it was in my mini mind call yesterday. Bringing some of your in-person life. Here was the problem, let's say. This person had ice skating. She's on the call today. Ice skating. And the question was, bringing your hobbies into your brand. Like, what's the point of it? It was ice skating, hiking. For me, it looks like working out. Now, the reason these things are how you can tie this to your business and why it could be important to bring it into your brand, that's if you want to attract people that care about that value, because your values, when you share certain things, are going to attract people with the same kind of values. Whoever your client is, whatever problem you're helping solve, it's a different type of person to solve it with the same values and to solve it with not the same values. So whenever you see me posting about my workouts or something to do with the gym, I'm always talking about how it fits my brand, what it does for me in business. For me, flow state, creativity, I use it as an embodiment practice to tap into my next level self. So while I use the gym, while I use eating clean, while I use that, somebody else's, and I call it wealth state, a wealth state workout. Somebody else may call it a wealth state walk and a hike. Somebody else may get into flow state a different way. I'm going to have a lot more fun working with somebody who enjoys flow state by working out versus somebody that's flow state that is an MMA fighter. I don't know. That's not my person. But if I'm talking about spin class and yoga for my creativity, not just in general lifestyle, for my creativity, to give me content ideas, offer ideas, and this and that I would love to work with that woman who enjoys that too. Just like the other person we're talking yesterday, for her who also teaches business, she would probably prefer to work with somebody who enjoys being outdoors, hiking, because she does. Because even when you're helping them with content, when you're helping them with branding or whatever it is that you teach it, you do, the examples, the messaging is going to be different. So when I use, this is going to tie into storytelling when I talk about it later on. When I tell stories in a lot of my content, I reference things like, because at the gym, how when you're at the gym and you XYZ, the analogies, I'm still talking to content, but the analogies I'm using are related to my lifestyle things. So this other person who really enjoys nature and being outside, her stories telling, and she could probably find examples, not probably, she will find examples of analogies that relate through stories of hobbies. And then again comes the beautiful thing of deciding, do I want to share that? Do I want to share that? You don't have to, but this is what you see in my brand. So everything I'm sharing today, and I fully believe that you guys are here because you're activated by part of my brand. The next bit, what makes your content bold, because everybody knows bold content is saying what you really mean. But yes, it's saying what you really mean also to the right person. Like you're not going off on and getting to the point. You're not going off on tangents. High level premium buyers, you got to think about it this way. They don't have time. They're not really consuming a lot of content. They're going for what they need, getting off. Or if they're on there, they just want to know, okay, tell me already, what is it? So a shift here for bold content one of the biggest shifts that I made when I was before writing content, getting into that state, the creative state, your wealth state. When you think about your person, it's a tiny little mindset thing. Create content for your mentor. What if one of your mentors hired you? Create content for the women in your mastermind that you think are your equals, or there's no comparing, okay? But I'm just gonna say it for sake of conversation. Your equals, or you think they're higher than you, but you know that they could teach you something, that you could teach them something. Think about them when you're making that content. When you immediately think of it that way, what already shifts? Maybe the way you're speaking to it, like immediately. Like there's people that I have paid to learn content from let's just go by numbers. They're making way more money than me. They're way more seen, bigger everything, bigger this, bigger that. But I do think I could teach them a thing or two about content. How would I make content for that person? Boom, make content for that. That's high level, that's premium. Because immediately my languaging wants to shift. And something I said to you guys yesterday, and this is, again, I teach a lot on lifetime shift. You guys know I just had this big identity shift. The biggest thing, again, I'm going to bring it up. I said it yesterday, is that playful side of me. She is getting less and less all the time. And it's so beautiful. And it's like really owning that sides of you are going to be lessened by you. But the magic there is make sure that it's you doing it, not because of anybody else. But I feel that. And when I write content now today, I consciously have to go back to, am I creating for me, it's 2 months ago, 1 month ago. No, I'm going to create for so-and-so person. I actually have 2 people in mind that I have paid to learn from that I think about often before I post content. So I encourage you guys to think about that. Who is one of your biz besties? Is it a biz bestie that you could teach something cool? Write it for them. Somebody make, I'm just speaking by way of money, but money doesn't equal success. But somebody making more money than you, how would you teach them your thing? Huge, huge shift. Do you guys feel that? Yeah. Okay. The last bit here for brand voice, 3 things that you should be bleeding into all of your content. I don't know how, like so when I do my messaging, I have a messaging sheet where I actually list these out: characteristics, vision, these 3 things: characteristics, big vision, and the results that she wants in her languaging. These things need to be bled into different areas of your content, in your hooks, in your messaging, in your visuals, in the the pictures you're using. All of that needs to be bleeded in, but in order to do so, you have to be clear with that. So take the moment to open the document and write it all out, so you're not always starting from ground zero. Because when you have that organization behind the scenes, that makes your creativity, gives more space for your creativity to fly, to flourish. But now for deliverables. Something else that you guys see a lot of me, let me drink some water actually. Group chug. Okay. Something else that you guys see a lot from me is video content. Not to be mistaken for, and there's no right or wrong way, but not to be mistaken for carousels, not having carousels. Carousels are very, very, very important. That's potent messaging. That's to the point. That's just tell me what I need to know. It's having a beautiful blend of both. Not only will you speak to different type of premium buyers, you are speaking to different expressions also, and you're felt in a different way. To close this slide up, like these characteristics, big vision, and the results, like this goes everywhere in all of your deliverables. Now, when it comes to the stories and right before we get into actual content itself, examples, the surface level stories and hooks and content, like when you have a movement versus a business, like we were talking about earlier, you're going deeper. Like, what are some real life things that you're actually talking about or conversations that you want to have with the dreamiest buyer, the person that you would love to actually work with? The problem I see so often is on the feed, it doesn't match the depth of the types of conversations you're actually having with your clients. So whatever it is that you're helping solve, how can you, like, when your clients come into you with a problem, let's say, what do you end up actually supporting them with? That's the thing that you want to speak to. When you're speaking to her desires, you want to think about the desires that she's almost embarrassed to say out loud. I'm reading the chat in here. It's important to play around and see what the data your people tell you. Yeah. And take the data that works for you and the data that doesn't. And be mindful of that when you're taking data, that it's coming from, like, if you shifted identities and you're calling a different person, be mindful the data might be from the old community that you are elevated from, the old problems that you're no longer serving. Yeah. So even in your hooks and your content overall, like your languaging, you can play with bold words and being really edgy, but also it's more about being clear and sharing things that you're actually helping solve. Okay. Now, but before I get there, I'm going to go a little bit into content. I'm going to email you guys some of my favorite hooks, like activational hooks, like a couple things, but this isn't a hooks thing. This is like the voice of your brand, the voice of your content. But there are essentially 3 different types of content that I have always shifted or went into. 3, this is not about reinventing the wheel. It's about the energy you're coming from, speaking to the right person, but from that space of yesterday. So when I go into these 3 contents, you've heard them all before. But what the biggest shift is how you're presenting them, how you're leaning into them. So the very first one, and there's a lot of talk right now. I'm just seeing when I do scroll that educational content is dead, not too much educational premium buyers, like, no. And again, there's no wrong or right way, but I don't believe it's dead. I believe that you need to show you're an expert, that people need to know you know your shit. Something that I saw a lot happen last year. It was everybody, a lot of people were like, be bold, be sassy, be spicy, be this, be that, right? And what happened is, wait, what's a hot topic, Gabrielle? The educational content's dead? Yeah, I'm seeing it too. What do you think?
I disagree. I
Yeah,
mean, I feel like everything has its place,
yeah.
especially depending on where you are in your business journey, but I'm seeing it everywhere. So it's like the new trend, I think.
Okay. Yeah, I'm seeing it too. And I'm like, people need to know. Let me go back to what I was going to say from what I saw a lot of last year. People trying to be bold, trying to be sassy, trying to be spicy. So what it turned into was like activational content everywhere and educational content that's stuffed with words that are trying to make educational content bold. So now it's like, just tell me the fucking thing. Show me you're the expert. Now, the thing about bold educational content, it doesn't mean add AF to it. It doesn't mean add a spicy word to it. This content actually isn't going to feel spicy. But this is how I explain it. It's going to feel vanilla, but because you want to be so direct, so clear, so potent, no fluff, the premium buyer, they want to know you're the expert. They're not going to hire you because you're sassy. You need to show the high paying clients want to know what you know. So, and also make sure that you're speaking to the right level of education, the right level of problem that you're solving through the education. So one way that I teach educational content is also in line with problem aware content, because you're going to tell them what their problem is, educate them on how to solve it without the over explaining, just like to the point. That boldness comes from clarity, less words, no over explaining, no storytelling in this, unless you're deliberately making a storytelling through example, but just to the point. And to end this one piece here, I'll make sure I got all my notes. It's very blunt, direct. And sometimes, as you move up in business, it's like these premium buyers, sometimes they forget the most basic things that need to be refreshed because they're off scaling their business to big numbers. So a thought prompt is, what are some of the foundational things that your high level client, your highest premium buyer may need to be refreshed on? Maybe they haven't heard it in a minute, but it doesn't mean the very beginner problem. It means that the foundation problem at the level that they're at. That's where educational content, I believe, could get a bad rap too, because you're solving problems that you were solving last year. You're not even solving problems in your content that your current close proximity or mastermind clients that's having the best results or is going through. That's when it becomes a problem. Some thoughts here. And again, these hooks are not spicy, but the spiciness comes in being so direct and blunt. Here's some thought prompts. If I don't see this when I go to your feed, I'm like, what do you do? Here's how to do this high level thing. That's not that, but like your whatever problem is, here's how you do this. Here's what I would change if you want this. If you're experiencing this right now, do this. Read this. The next one. So that's my thoughts. If they don't know what you do, they're not going to trust you to help them. Just think about that. Okay, next. Number 2, activational content. To be clear on that last one, educational is a mix of educational and problem. Because I have a firm belief that premium buyers, they're not out there dicking around on Instagram. They want, like, you have a problem, I'm gonna pay to help me solve it. Like, think about you when you go looking for something. You don't want to speak to pain points all the time, then you potentially might attract people that are just looking for, like, give me the answers. But also, I'm that kind of buyer. When I have a problem with something, I'm a hard fucking worker. I don't give up till I figure it out. But also, I will pay top dollar if you show me that you can solve that problem with me. Number 2 is bold activational content. This is about you, but for the premium buyer. Like, I want you guys to think about, like, something that happened recently that made you think, whoa, I fucking did that. Oh my gosh, I did that. Like, that happened. These are the things that the premium buyers are going to read and be like, oh, like, she's moving. She trusts herself. She believes in herself. She's doing big things. Like, people are interested in humanity and how you lead yourself. It shows leadership. And this could be like, there's a big ownership piece in this, because you might feel like, oh, it might seem like I'm showing off. It might seem like I'm full of myself. But in your messaging, that's where you tie it back to them. You tie it back to how you led yourself, and because they'll see themselves in that. Something else that I shifted, it's the tiniest thing also, but it's these tiny nuanced things in your messaging. You know, sometimes you have a realization about something, or something just clicks. You're like, oh, that makes sense now. And if you go to make content about it, this comes up to, you share your massive realizations as truth. It's just like, these are the facts. It's like, I had this thought yesterday. It's like, boom, hey, did you know? Da, 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 da. Boom, boom, here's the thing. Because you actually believe that in your soul. And some of this languaging can look like, when you say things like, I believe that XYZ, the I believe part, what if we took that out? And it's like XYZ. Tiniest things. When I started owning this part, this is activational content, owning the voice, like knowing your words. And this is also the internal part that we discovered yesterday, being so sold on that when I am in love with myself, when I'm obsessed with myself healthily, you're obsessed with yourself, it's truly that feeling of, I don't care if you don't like it, because I do. I do. And that's where your premium buyer is going to come from. But also, when branding is about you. Like, you want to, that feeling that you have. So in knowing what your activational things are, a big part of this is knowing, like, do you even know? This is really an interesting quick story. In my first, like, year or so of business, I've never really been somebody that scrolled Instagram very much. And my mentor one day was asking me, she's like, well, what are your strong opinions about what I teach, what I was coaching on? And I was like, I don't know. And I couldn't figure out why it was I didn't know. Like, what do you mean I don't know? I didn't know, because they were just facts to me, because I wasn't scrolling to know what anybody else was teaching when it came to that. So to me, in my head, it's just the way it is. It wasn't, and I literally told my mentor one day at that time period, I was like, I need to go scroll, because I need to see, like, what's being said. I actually got to scroll. But knowing that there was a different energy than in which I scrolled. So I'm like, oh, okay, my strong opinion is, like, some of mine today, like in like content, self-leadership and content go hand in hand. If you don't work out, your creativity is not going to come. I don't want to work with anybody that doesn't work out or value that. So I'm going to make sure I talk to that and speak to that and share my embodiment in that. It's a tiny thing. That's a tiny example, but really knowing what your views, your bold opinions are, and speaking them as fact in your content. Even if it offends somebody, even if I had a client, a mastermind client, that had a very different opinion than I did about something, and she brought it into our call. And I was like, I love this. Good. you know, and remember that Desiree was there. And, you know, essentially it was like, I'm going to joke when I say this, but talking shit about, not talking shit, but like completely Xing on the way I spoke to something. I'm like, I love that. And you're right too, because she was. And you really knowing that like there is no wrong, like everybody is going to have their life experiences. Your content, and if I wish the internet understood this, everybody's content is and beliefs and opinions are created from their own life experiences. So literally, anyone that teaches content is right based off of their level of experience. Now I want you to switch this to you, like you're right. And whatever you think, you're right based off of your life experiences. You're anti-vehicle, you're anti the opposite of what you teach and preach. They're right too. Nobody's out here to hurt anybody, to be like, I'm right, you're wrong. And that's the big thing that you have to understand too when you come into these bold activational content pieces, when you are wanting to say something or wanting to tell a story. That's where that ownership of the woman we stepped into yesterday, that's where she comes in. And that's where like, this is my thought. That thought that I had, it's not a thought, it's a fact. Everybody's out there just having their life experience. The third and last piece that you see a lot from me in content is storytelling content. But real storytelling. And also not novel storytelling. The problem that can come to storytelling is a couple things. We get lost because there's so much you want to share. And it doesn't always mean life story, but it can be. But in being mindful of always sharing your struggle, everybody has a struggle story. Being mindful of always sharing that story, because there's two sides of this. There's no right or wrong, but you may attract somebody who is struggling with that thing, thinking that you're going to help them with that while you very moved past that. I'm gonna give a personal example from mine when I speak about when I couldn't take a picture. When I couldn't take a picture, when I couldn't even talk on camera, I had a really hard time just accepting my face for my Bell's palsy and all those insecurities. But that's not my premium buyer anymore right now. My premium buyer, my ideal client, loves being on camera. She loves like talking on being seen. She loves that. Pearl says, yes, telling the story not from the struggle point of view, but from the I've experienced this, yes. And making sure to pull out the hero, the how you did this, that way they can see what's possible. So it's not just that, there's the origin story. And also what I see some people forget often is the relevant stories. This is staying relevant. Similar to what I said in activational, like things that are happening lifetime. This is what's happening. This is what I'm experiencing. This is what I've navigated. And the last bit here that you see a lot of from me is analogies. And the way that I tell them, this looks like analogies from life. And oftentimes, like when you, people will often come wanting to learn storytelling with me, and it takes practice. But when you do so from being conscious about, okay, I'm going to learn to tie this back to one of my offers. And it's not always like I have to tie it to an offer, but we're a business. You want to, because stories get people involved and then they're listening. And then when you can tie in the boom, this is what I'm going to teach you an XYZ offer. The easiest way to lean into bold storytelling from analogies and life things is anytime that something happens in your day and you think, oh, old me would have done it this way, or I would have done that so differently now today. This, you can start telling the story like today I was at the gym and I saw XYZ thing happen and it made me think about X. Do you remember when? So now you're telling that story, right? And then you say something like, old me would have handled it this way, but today I XYZ, XYZ, XYZ. How did I do that? Because I started X and this is what I teach you in X program. Very easy way to dive into some storytelling. Yes. So when it comes to content and these things are weaved in all of this, the biggest takeaway from this mini training today is that it's the energy from yesterday along with this person that we're speaking to, where is she? Being really clear on her characteristics, vision, the real results that she wants, the ones she's scared to speak to, and dripping this into everywhere. The energy of yesterday, making sure that you're actually speaking to the right person and dripping that everywhere through your visuals, through your videos, through your fonts, through your pictures, and every single bit of that. Music choices. And really understanding that not every story needs to be told. But the problem is when you don't tell one that you want to share. And differentiating the type of brand that you are, how much of your personality and what parts that came up yesterday want to be into your brand. Is it the depth? Is it this more sexy? Is it more storytelling? Is it a little bit softer? Is it more playful? And finding that resistance piece, because that resistance piece is going to come up when you're creating storytelling content, when you're creating activational content, when you're creating educational. So the next time you go to write any of these pieces of content, tap into the energy from yesterday, the identity of her, walk around the house, put the song on, dance, shake, like do that every morning. Do that every morning. I do. I do. And that's that big piece where it's so funny. We're talking about this today. As I was getting ready for this call today, like you guys, I've truly shifted a lot this last week, a lot. Or let's say, excuse me, 3 weeks, a lot. And I really thought this morning, I was watching my stories again. I'm like, God, I think red light practice, like when I share my red light stuff, I think I'm done sharing that. And like I'm digging deep in that because I do it every day. And my brand, my mission is to show, I feel very inauthentic if I don't show you guys what's responsible for the energy that I firmly believe you love about me. It's the thing that I taught yesterday. It's the fact that I eat really clean, the fact that I work out, the fact that I do this. There's a lot of life to that. And I firmly believe if everybody had a morning mirror practice and felt sexy in the morning, their entire energy would shift in life and business. So there's that bit of me like, yeah, I don't want to share that anymore. But also in authenticity, it feels like, how can I expect people to have the results, not in a comparison way, but to have the results or the energy or the this that I teach and preach by not sharing what I'm actually doing that I think is responsible for that. And as a business mentor, tapping into sexy and taking selfies doesn't fucking sell. But it's part of what I firmly believe. So you'll be seeing me talk to the magnetism piece a lot more because I think it's important. Having your strategy come from that, that, especially right now when things are shifting, like the online space is different from, I think that bubble that we had from 20, when everybody was home, that bubble is shifting and everything's kind of settling out. And people are wanting more like human, more life, more personality, more authenticity. Okay, we have a little bit of time. I saved some time for some questions. Does anybody have something to say? Or a question? Abrielle, I was talking about your carousel. I don't know if you were on there, your carousel course coming up. I caught a glimpse of it. I didn't see it, but I'm like, I just know it's going to be good. I'm going to get in there.
I heard you. And I was thinking as you said it, talking about like the power of video. Something that I want to emphasize is like you can put videos in your carousels. Like I feel like people think carousels are just like they have to be static. So when
Yeah.
you said that, I'm like infusing that into the program because they need to know reels and carousels can be one thing. They don't have to be separate. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm very excited about it.
I've made some like that and they're fun. People like when it like gives it a more of an experience. It takes a little bit extra work though, but like that's what we do. Actually, I just have someone coming out tomorrow that's like that. It's different. Oh, we gotta get in there. We gotta get in there. Mm,
I have a quick question.
yeah.
So one of the things I've been navigating through is like in real life, like what you're spoken to, right? Like I have all of these different sides of me when I'm with my family and friends. I'm funny, I am, bossy, I'm bold, I'm all these things, but I have a hard time finding the way, and I guess that's the problem, I'm trying to find a way, but trying to display that part of myself in my content in a way that feels natural. Like
Mm,
that funnier, like lighthearted, humorous side. I think sometimes I feel like the content is just one dimensional and I want to infuse that in, but I'm not quite sure how.
mm. I haven't looked at your content deep enough to have like a specific example, but could it be something like, do you share any of your life? Like, do you share B-roll of maybe you play, do you have kids? Or do you have, yeah, like playing, do you ever share that, like playing with kids or,
I do in my stories, and I feel like in my stories, you can see more of who I am, but on my feed, it's a
Mhm.
lot more like polished, serious business. So I want to infuse more of what I share in my stories into my feed. But I think I overthink the feed. I don't know why. Like I think the feed has to be like put together and the stories is behind the scenes. So yeah.
I get that, same, same. So you know what I always say with there, what could do, there's a couple ways to this. The challenge is to challenge yourself when you're on your stories to literally, as is, make it a reel. Like you can do both, make it a reel. If it's like talking, cut out the space. I can't help but say that, cut out the space. And, but that energy, because it happens to me too. When I'm making a reel, all of a sudden I'm like, so, da 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 da. When I'm on stories, I'm like, oh my God, you guys. So, da, 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 da. Like that's a thing, even with me too. But how I combine that is I will sometimes take this, post on my stories as it is, save it. This is like warming yourself up to bringing it on your, because if you just do it raw tomorrow, start talking about like be more funny and playful on your feed, it's gonna like shock you. You'll do it once maybe. So take this video. Okay, put it in whatever you put it in to cut out the blank space. Do, 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 do. Add the hook on there, and then let the feed cover be the feed, right? Like match the feed, but then the video itself is the energy from stories. This sounds so small, but it's like wetty. It's like, feels like softening your nervous system to bring that into your feed. So now what happens is it's a bigger vision thing. When it's Ariel, when you're looking at your own feed, your content, you're normalizing that energy to yourself. You're like, okay, okay. So over time, it starts to feel more comfortable to share that part of you. And also your feed, people start to see it. Now, this isn't for comments, this isn't for likes. I'm very aware of that. But when they feel like they know you more, it's like you start to feel comfortable too. It's like, oh, they kind of know me. Yesterday, an example I gave on the call, it could be also because in your stories, tends to be people that are closer in your world. Like they just like you feel more comfortable with them. Whereas the feed, it's maybe not. It's like when you go to a party and you don't know. I said this yesterday, and you don't know anybody. It's like when you see your best friend, you're like, "What's up?" And that's the energy of your Instagram stories. That. And on the feed, it's like, "Hi guys, hi, I'm Irene." It's different. So it could be bringing some of those natural, curated, the ones from the story where you curate it and then make it into a reel to where, okay, we're wetting the world with this. We're warming them up.
I love
Another,
I didn't
yeah,
even think about it. And I have an archive of stories. I don't even have to create from scratch now. So
yeah.
that's perfect. Thank you. I love it.
One more thing could also be, I'm just having a thought of like a video, maybe you're playing with your kids and doing circles. I don't know why I have a very specific video. Like you're doing circles, playing with your kids, right? And like how I teach the sexy dancing that we did yesterday, like getting that energy. Maybe that is how you get in your flow state. And if this is part of how you teach branding, I don't know. But do you teach that something to where what gives you that energy to create your brand XYZ? I don't know enough about your work yet, but it could be like warming, like, let me see, storytelling. Like when I spend time with my kids, my family, it really lights me up to XYZ. Like, what does that do for you in your business? Right? It helps you create the energy for your brand. It helps you this, it does this. So now, okay, I'm gonna bring some of this on here. It could be a brain thing because you have a very luxurious and curated feed and content is beautiful. It could be a brain thing to where it doesn't make sense there. Okay, so shut up, brain. It does make sense. Here it is. Because when I do this, it creates the woman that you see on the feed. Mm,
So good. Yep. I love it.
I can't wait to see. I'm like, let me see the reels. Let me see the videos in the carousel. Let me see it all. Anything else, guys? All right. All right, well, tomorrow's call is gonna be on the aesthetic, on the feed. I'm gonna jump into Canva and gonna explain to you guys what mine looks like. And I have a style, I have a design. We'll get into Canva a tiny bit, show you guys a couple things by way of activating creativity. And we'll have some fun tomorrow. It'll be about pictures, aesthetic, brand vibe, and that bit about when someone lands on your feed, like, ooh, they're licking the feed, they're licking your phone. All right, you guys, I will see everybody, the few that are on here on the Mini Mind call, and everybody else have a good day. Bye.